Hello, and welcome back to Beyond Resistance. We're a podcast that will focus on local politics and how to build blue power in red areas. Hey, Jennifer, how have you been?
I've been good. How are you?
I've been good too. I guess we should introduce ourselves. I'm Sarah Schultz from Midland, Michigan, right here in the middle of the state. And I've been involved in local politics for about 8 years and sit on the board of the local county party. Jennifer, do you want to introduce
I'm
yourself?
I'm Jennifer Austin, chair of the local Midland County Democratic Party. I've been involved in politics. Started sort of in 2017, but it's become more of an obsession now than a little volunteer thing like it used to be.
Same, same. And along with that obsession comes with this sort of like need for me at least to kind of think about politics at the local level and how it just intersects with the state and national level. And we're sitting here in a local area that has seen some great movement from red to blue in the last 8 or so years. And so we're just going to bring in those topics and talk about them from that perspective. So Jennifer, of course, what I'm kind of thinking about these days are the headlines out of New York City related to the manhunt for the person who allegedly shot and killed the CEO of United Healthcare. And I've been thinking about how that issue has just brought up so many issues across the country and social media about issues around health insurance and just insurance in general. Have you been paying attention to those headlines?
Yeah, so okay, it's kind of interesting because I have children all the way from 29 down to 12, as you know. But my daughter called me yesterday and she was like, Mom, did you hear about this? And we got talking about it. And, I'll go into more of that in a minute. But then I sat down to watch the Lions last night and
Mm,
Riley sat down next to me, my 16-year-old, and he's like, Mom, did you hear about this? And like, it just struck me that so many people, like, I follow the news, I follow politics, I
yeah,
follow all this stuff. So it's not a surprise that I would see it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it was a surprise that my 29-year-old daughter, and my 16-year-old son were both like, wow, did you hear about this? So yes, I have definitely seen some of it.
yeah. And to be clear, like we don't know what the motives are. We don't know that this person that they're hunting is guilty of this thing. But the interesting thing to me is the groundswell of just like personal stories related to health insurance delays, claims being denied, just a real impact on people's lives, with sort of the assumption being that that type of thing, that type of experience is what may have led someone to this act. And let me just be clear, of course, I would never condone such an act. Horrific violence in all ways. And also, I can put myself in the space of empathy, not to condone somebody, but to understand what it might be like to get to the end of your rope when it comes to life and death, when it comes to being able to
Mm-hmm.
afford and obtain the health care that you or your loved one needs, and just the desperation that might come from that. And so yeah, that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, on the one hand, I have empathy and sympathy for this man's family. I cannot
Sure.
believe how horrible it would be. Well, I mean, I can't think about how horrible it would be if something like this happened to my family, whether it was me or my husband, and everybody had to deal with that. Like there's no call for violence, but I also am a mother of 5 children, and I can think about like if somebody harmed my child now, you would want revenge, you would want justice, you would want whatever. So there's a little bit of that empathy of understanding where somebody could be coming from that. I don't know that that's how I would ever deal with it.
Yeah, I'd like to
I'd
think
like
it's
to
not,
think I would not,
but yeah.
but
I know.
I understand to some extent the maybe not that particular man if if he's guilty, etc. But the things that I'm hearing, because I don't have a ton of time for social media these days, and I just popped on yesterday just to look, and that's what I saw. That's the first things that were coming up
Mhm.
was Am I supposed to have sympathy for this person? This is what happened to me when my insurance got, denied. And
Yeah.
yeah, so definitely I'm seeing a lot of pain out there.
For sure, and it causes us to remember, right, all of those experiences that we've had. I mean, I remember when the dams failed here in our area. Well, this isn't health insurance, this is more about homeowners insurance, but my family was evacuated from Wixom Lake as the floodwaters were coming into our homes. And we got back to Midland, and I'll never forget my dad, whose house was basically underwater, sitting on the couch with no shoes on because he had evacuated with no shoes on his feet, on the phone with his insurance agent and getting the news that actually, sir, you don't have any insurance that's going to cover this, while the flood waters were literally in his house. And, my dad is not a person of wealth, right? And so, thinking about how on earth to recover, and it took a while, weeks before we understood just how devastating everything was. And sure, he got a little bit of FEMA support, but not nearly
Mhm.
enough to do that. Meanwhile, he'd been paying, his homeowner's insurance diligently for his entire adult life. And
Yeah.
so it's not only health, right? There's all sorts of examples in health, but this sort of groundswell of stories about just how insidious the insurance industry can be, hits everybody. It just hits everybody.
And it's just frustrating because I understand they are a business. They are here to make money. I totally get that. I understand that. But it's so frustrating that they're making money off of the backs of people and hurting people. Um,
Yeah.
Whether, whatever insurance you're talking about, I've story after story after story. I mean, we ourselves had, we had 3 feet of water in our house from that flood
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
And we did get a little bit of FEMA money. We did get some insurance money. None of it covered what
Not
we
even
ended up
close.
spending
Yeah.
and we're not finished. Like, we have not finished remodeling after that flood. And the flood was what, 2020?
Yeah.
It's been 4 years, almost
Yeah.
5 now. Um, so yeah, I feel a little bit of that pain. Your dad had it way worse.
Yeah. He had to
I remember,
completely gut
yeah,
his whole house down
I
to the
remember that one
studs.
weekend that we all
Uh-huh.
got together
We all
and
got
just like tried
together.
to finish stuff while he was gone. And that
Yep.
just kind of that got me thinking about like how people have like GoFundMe's when they can't pay for their insurance, and
Right.
everybody's like, "Oh, that is so heartwarming and sweet and wonderful." And it is. Like, it is wonderful that communities will take care of themselves. And it's not that I don't want that to happen, but there's something broken with the system if we have to constantly rely on all of the other people who are also
Mhm.
hurting
Mhm.
to try to get something
I
done.
know. I
It's
know.
just frustrating.
It is so frustrating. And here's the thing, like coming off of this recent election, that I'm also thinking about related to all of this, right? Because like you have this incident in New York, you have this groundswell of people. Like I'm sure any two people, right? You and me were trading horror stories of insurance. Any two people could also be trading the same types of horror stories of insurance. And here we are coming off of this election where all of these issues are brought into the like public arena. All of this money is spent on like amplifying and heightening these issues, and like this one wasn't mentioned, right?
Hmm.
There, like insurance reform like was not even
Hmm.
anywhere in the vernacular at all. And so to me it's like an example of like politics actually, like in the political sort of system, actually not understanding the people on the ground. I mean, you want to talk about how like there's a million like reasons why the Democrats lost this last election.
Hmm.
And one of them is we didn't understand the actual pain that people were
Yeah.
feeling on the ground and speaking to it in really clear
Hmm.
ways that are full of like empathy and compassion. And this just to me is like if literally all of these millions of people can sit around and tell these horrific stories about the insurance industry, why it wasn't that an issue that was even brought up. And instead, we're spending time talking about, gender affirming care and
Hmm.
bathrooms and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, like when we decided to talk about this issue, I decided to just do a little research. Um, just so, I mean, I knew sort of little things that I had encountered, but I don't want to talk about something without having a little more background.
Yeah.
Um, so I like looked through all of my political podcasts because that's one of the things I listened to. None of them were mentioning it. I
Mm.
looked through news podcasts. NPR had a very short segment on it, and it was mostly about the shooting, but then it did talk about how there's a lot of frustration and anger with insurance companies. Um, CNN, Anderson Cooper did 2 nights, 2 episodes on the shooting. And like, you know those shows. That is just the salacious going into what are they
Yeah.
thinking and what's the NYPD doing and blah 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 blah. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're missing the point.
Mm-hmm.
You're missing the point.
Mm-hmm.
And then I googled CEO health insurance, and I thought, well, it's mostly going to come up same thing. It was not. None of the stories were focusing on the shooting. Almost every story that just came up a little while ago was about the groundswell of dissatisfaction with insurance companies and how people are sharing their stories online. And there are some people out there saying some pretty nasty things, and
Terrible. Yeah.
I can't condone that, but I do understand their pain.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, the mere fact that like this man was shot in the middle of Manhattan, and he happened to be a CEO of a health insurance company, and the assumption by millions of us all over the country is that it's because somebody was really upset about some
Hmm.
issue with their insurance or their health care or whatever. Like, that fact that we made that assumption tells us that this insurance reform, insurance issues are a big problem. And we
Hmm.
didn't assume that there was personal vendetta that happened. We didn't assume any other reason that this person was
Yeah.
shot in the streets of New York City. Everyone's assuming it's this. So like that, there's a story there that we need
Yeah.
to be paying attention to.
And no matter what the motive ends up being, and it could be any number of things, I'm leaning towards it probably is a disgruntled person that did not get the insurance for themselves or their
Yeah,
family and had catastrophic,
yeah,
issues. But whatever it ends up being, the story's still here. People
yeah.
are still hurting. People are still suffering, and there's so much more that needs to be done to help people in this avenue. And like I didn't get a chance to look this up, but like I said, the political podcasts that I listen to daily, I listen to this stuff all the time. Not one of them mentioned it, and the political ramifications of it, which I think is an issue. And I haven't seen where any politicians are talking about it
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
And I think that's a missed opportunity, as morbid as people may think it is to weigh in on this issue under these circumstances. You have to meet people where they are, and right
Hmm.
now people are talking about something, and you
Yeah,
need to be there for them. You need
yeah.
to be part of the conversation.
Where and how many other things are our political leaders missing the boat on, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
not listening to where people are actually hurting, and they're spending time talking about existential things that actually don't matter. And
Mm-hmm.
I know I keep going back to the transgender issue, but I was just absolutely sickened during the whole like lead up to the last election about how much time and energy and effort was spent on the Republican side for radio, TV ads, all the things, all just aimed squarely at transgendered people, um, and
Attacking them.
attacking them, putting them right in the middle of basically the crosshairs of all of the
Mm-hmm.
things. And these are folks who are already like marginalized, already from vulnerable populations.
Yeah.
um, and the issue is not even an issue. It's not,
Yeah.
you're making up an issue. I did a little bit of research and I think it was ABC or CBS had an article sometime in November or late October that said that $21 million had been spent on TV ads specifically around transgender, like around the whole sort of made up kind of like prisoner, sort of federal prisoner kind of
Yeah.
gender care or bathrooms or whatever. And that's $21 million focused on an issue that is a non-issue. I personally don't know anybody who's been attacked in a bathroom by a transgender person. Like, there's
No.
actually no story that I've ever run into, let alone a person that I know. This is not an issue that anyone should be lying awake at night worried about. But sure as heck, a lot of people are lying awake at night worried about if their health insurance company is going to approve the care that they need or their loved one needs to survive. And
Yeah.
why we're talking about one made up thing and not
Hmm.
another thing that actually matters is beyond me. And this is where
Yeah.
we're missing the boat when it comes to elections.
Yeah. And I really think that there's a whole nother issue along with this is, we have the ACA. It brought healthcare to millions and millions of people. Was it perfect? No. We know it has problems. We know it had problems. It's not perfect. And I would be more than happy to have a conversation about how we can try to make that better. Um, but now that Trump's in office and he has a trifecta, he's not looking to make it better. His
No.
concepts of a plan, it's all about getting rid of it because
Yeah,
he wants to punish Obama. That's literally all it is. And
yeah,
so millions and millions more Americans are going to suffer in the realm of the healthcare issue, because this one man has a vendetta against a
yeah,
black man that made fun of him at a White House press
yeah,
evening, whatever that was, I forget. Like,
yeah,
it's unbelievable what,
yeah.
how people have to suffer because of somebody's ego, or because insurance companies just want to make money. Like, what was United Healthcare's? It was like $210 billion or
Yeah.
something that they
Yeah.
made
Yeah.
last year. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's an insane amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And it's like another example similar to like the border bill that got killed for political reasons. Like that is like we're not going to solve a problem. We're going to make a decision not to solve a problem for political like
Hmm.
gamesmanship. And this is similar. Like there's like we could try to strengthen the ACA, like we could do all of those things, but we're not because like there's politics behind it. Um, the other thing as far as health insurance broadly that I think about too is like just the disconnect between a group of people who are saying they're all about like capitalism, right, and free market, and the same group of people being okay with like your employer being the one who's in charge of whether or not you have health insurance and how good it
Yeah.
is. And I have actual people that I know, colleagues, who have considered starting businesses to like enhance capitalism and like their own livelihoods, and have looked into it and made the decision that they could not do that because they would have to leave their job and they would lose their insurance.
Yeah.
Now, like the dissonance between somebody who's like all about capitalism and free market and business, but also about these barriers to people like not actually starting their own business. Like I just don't understand that. I just don't
Hmm.
understand it.
Yeah, and insurance is, like, even with me and my husband. As I've told you, I'm looking to join the workforce after almost 18 years of not being in the normal workforce. I've been taking care of the kids and doing other things,
Which
but
is work.
which is a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Um,
Yeah.
but my husband's kind of like, well, if you get it, can you get a job without insurance? Because if you get insurance, then you have to use yours and you can't use mine. And mine's pretty good. And we want to keep, my husband's, but I
Yeah.
might not be able to, depending
You
upon
will
the
have
job
that
that I get.
choice, right? Like that's going to be something to consider, but that's not necessarily fully your choice to make if you're
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to find a job. Yeah. Um, definitely definitely an issue that's like timely, right? The headlines and the like
Hmm.
salaciousness of the manhunt, but like the undercurrent of all of this is that it's brought up this really like visceral issue
Yeah.
for people and for voters, that is not even on the radar of our
Hmm.
elected officials and our political candidates
Yeah.
to be addressed at all. And Republicans and Democrats alike, right? And this is what's happening right in our political spectrum where our politics are not matching what's on the ground and what the
Hmm.
needs are at a local level.
And I will say, back to the Googling the CEO health insurance, which once again, I did not think was going to bring up the stories that it brought up. Um,
Mhm.
Almost every news organization, CNN, NPR, ABC, CBS, Washington Post, New York Times, all had this story about people and their pain with insurance companies, related around, this shooting. Um, Wall Street Journal, their top story was a story about what a nice man the CEO was. And
Interesting.
nothing, like, I have nothing against him. Like, I don't know him. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say he wasn't a nice man by any means, but I think there's a conscious choice about
Mhm.
how stories get framed.
Mhm.
And Wall Street Journal is a right-leaning
Mhm.
publication.
Mhm.
And I haven't had a chance to go look at Fox, but I tell you what, Fox didn't have any posts pop up that we're talking about this either.
Yeah.
So that could say something, um, in regards to the way that, which side everybody wants to frame a story a certain way. And I do think that when you're looking at the majority of publications talking about how much people are suffering from insurance companies, it's time for politicians and everybody, just everybody, to really listen and see what we can do about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good example too, like the Wall Street Journal, the Fox News, like and paying attention to what these different outlets are saying and knowing where they lean, left or right, and who like health insurance like predominantly funds Republican candidates, right? Like in this
Mm-hmm.
system of, like basically no regulation on political fundraising and all of that stuff. And so I'm a right-leaning news organization, and there's a story out there that's going to be not so great for like health insurance companies, then I'm probably going to frame that story as to be something that's not, about
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, yeah, so paying attention to like that meta level of like how all of that's going down is important
Yeah.
too. Cool. All right. Well, it's been great talking to you, Jennifer. I'm sure we'll have another topic. There's no end to the juicy
Yeah.
topics we can talk about related to politics. And the truth is,
And
we talk about this all the time as
yeah.
friends, and we're just recording it now. So we'll probably have a
And
lot
if
of
anybody has
conversations in between.
ideas of things that they would like to hear us
Yeah,
talk about, drop it in the comments. Let us know. We'll take a review of it and decide if it's something we want to tackle. There's something we may
absolutely.
not want to tackle.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer. We'll talk soon.
All right. Yep. Talk
All
to you
right.
later.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.